January 24, 1948, Krakow, Poland. A chilling wind swept through Montelupich prison as a man was led to the gallows. His name was Erich Muhsfeldt, a twisted figure of the Nazi regime, responsible for the deaths of thousands in the crematoria of Auschwitz and Majdanek. But what stunned the world wasn't just his crimes. It was the fact that before becoming one of history's most notorious executioners, Muhsfeldt was a simple baker, a husband, and a father. How did a man who once needed dough for his village transform into a remorseless monster, a figure so ruthless that even his fellow SS officers recoiled? What drove his brutality? A warped mind from the start, or personal tragedies that plunged him into darkness? Step into this story with us as we uncover the chilling secrets of Erich Muhsfeldt, from his role in Operation Reinhard to the haunting moments that revealed his absolute lack of humanity. On the night of July 22, 1944, Soviet Red Army soldiers entered Majdanek, a Nazi concentration camp in occupied Poland. This wasn't just a military triumph. It marked the first major camp liberated in World War II, and what the Soviets found would haunt them forever. Gas chambers still reeked of Zyklon B, a deadly chemical that claimed thousands of lives in mere minutes. Crematoria ovens glowed with the ashes of victims, and mass graves stretched beyond sight, holding tens of thousands of remains. Journalists were summoned to document the reality, their pens trembling as they described the horrors: piles of children's shoes, unopened suitcases, and the thick stench of death in the air. The world reeled at the first published images, but this was only the beginning of a grim truth. By January 27, 1945, Auschwitz, the deadliest camp in the Nazi system, was liberated. At least 1.1 million people, mostly Jews, had perished there, their lives extinguished in gas chambers or crematoria within hours of arrival. Among the architects of this genocide, Erich Muhsfeldt stood out as a terrifying figure, a symbol of unimaginable cruelty. But who was he before the war, before his hands were stained with the blood of countless innocents? What turned an ordinary man into a merciless killer? To understand this tale, we must rewind to his early days. Erich Muhsfeldt was born on February 18, 1913, in Neubrück, a small town in the German Empire, now part of Poland. Raised in an unremarkable working-class family, he completed 8 years of elementary school in 1927 and trained as a baker, a trade requiring precision and promising stability. He married a woman named Elizabeth, had a son, and seemed destined for a quiet life amid the warmth of ovens and the scent of fresh bread. But beneath this modest exterior, a shadow was quietly growing, waiting to emerge. In 1933, as Adolf Hitler rose to power and the Nazi Party spread its anti-Semitic and fascist ideology across Germany, Muhsfeldt was swept into the political storm. He joined the SA Sturmabteilung, the Nazi Party's brown-shirted paramilitary force, where he first encountered violence and ruthlessness under the guise of ideals. By 1937, unsatisfied with the SA, he switched to the SS Schutzstaffel, a far more elite and infamous organization. In 1939, just before World War II erupted, he swore absolute loyalty to the Nazi Party, a pivotal moment in his life. When Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, igniting the global conflict, Muhsfeldt was swiftly recruited into the SS Totenkopf division, the Death's Head unit, known for its skull and crossbones emblem, a mark of the Reich's most brutal enforcers. Here he was trained to view prisoners as lesser beings, unworthy of life, and slowly Muhsfeldt's true nature began to surface. But what pushed him beyond blind obedience into a sickening pleasure in killing? Was it Nazi ideology seeping into his mind? or something darker, simmering within him all along. In August 1940, Erich Muhsfeldt arrived at Auschwitz, a vast concentration camp complex in Poland that would later become the heart of the Holocaust. Initially, he served as a block leader, Blockführer, and overseer of forced labor units. With a thick wooden club in hand, Muhsfeldt quickly established his absolute authority. To the prisoners, he was a storm cloud, dark, unpredictable, and always a harbinger of violence. They learned to dread his presence, knowing a wrong glance or a slow step could unleash his fury. Survivors' testimonies paint a grim picture of Muhsfeldt during this time. He routinely beat prisoners unconscious for the smallest infractions, a misaligned shoe during roll call or a whisper among the ranks. One witness described his eyes as gleaming with twisted joy whenever blood stained the camp's floors. But this was just the beginning. In November 1941, Muhsfeldt was transferred to Majdanek, where his role as head of the crematorium unleashed the full extent of his depravity. At Majdanek, he didn't merely oversee the disposal of the dead. He operated gas chambers using Zyklon B, a chemical that turned into lethal gas upon contact with air. From 1942 to 1943, tens of thousands of Jews, political prisoners, and Soviet POWs perished in these chambers under his command. Muhsfeldt wasn't just an enforcer. He was an inseparable part of the extermination machine, and his cruelty reached its peak in a horrific event in late 1943, Operation Harvest Festival. By late October 1943, the atmosphere at Majdanek, Poniatowa, and Trawniki grew heavier than ever. Jewish prisoners were ordered to dig trenches hundreds of meters long, told they were air defense fortifications to shield the camps from Allied bombings. But the inmates weren't fooled. Rumors spread through the barracks. These weren't defenses, but mass graves awaiting them. The truth emerged on November 4, 1943, when the SS, under direct orders from Heinrich Himmler, one of the Nazi regime's top leaders, launched Operation Erntefest, Harvest Festival, the largest single-day massacre of the Holocaust. Over 43,000 Jews were stripped naked, lined up, and marched to the trenches. Machine gun fire rang out relentlessly, mixed with loud music blaring from speakers to drown out the victims' desperate cries. Erich Muhsfeldt stood at the center of this slaughter. He coordinated the execution squads with icy precision, ensuring no bullet was wasted and no victim survived. Rare survivors recounted how Muhsfeldt paced between the pits, checking for any signs of life to order finishing shots. His warped mind seemed to revel in each life snuffed out, his ruthlessness so extreme that even some SS comrades turned away. But why did Muhsfeldt find joy in death? What set him apart from other SS officers who, though complicit, sometimes hesitated at the sight of bloodshed? The answer lies not just in his blind loyalty to the Nazis, but in the deep, hidden secrets of his psyche and life. Secrets we'll uncover next. After Germany's surrender in May 1945, Erich Muhsfeldt was captured by Allied forces. Initially, he faced a U.S. military court in January 1947, where he was sentenced to life imprisonment for his crimes at Flossenburg. But Poland, where Muhsfeldt had committed some of his most horrific acts, demanded greater justice. Extradited in November 1947, he stood trial in Krakow at the Auschwitz trial, one of the most significant proceedings to prosecute Nazi war criminals. There, survivors from Auschwitz and Majdanek took the stand, their voices trembling as they recounted Muhsfeldt's savagery. One witness recalled his mocking words to a Polish prisoner. "If you Poles weren't so foolish, we wouldn't have to burn you alive." Those taunts, once spoken with arrogance, now became evidence against him. Poland's Supreme National Tribunal showed no mercy. On December 22, 1947, Muhsfeldt was sentenced to death. On January 24, 1948, at Montelupich prison in Krakow, the 34-year-old was led to the gallows. No crowd gathered. No pleas for mercy escaped his lips. Only the cold wind and the sound of the rope tightening around his neck marked the moment. Muhsfeldt died in silence, ending a life steeped in blood and atrocities. Yet his story doesn't end here. The secrets behind his brutality and twisted mind remain to be explored. One lesser-known chapter of Erich Muhsfeldt's horrific career is his critical role in Operation Reinhard, a massive extermination campaign carried out by the Nazis from 1942 to 1943 to wipe out Jews in occupied Poland. Named after Reinhard Heydrich, a key architect of the Holocaust, this operation claimed over 2 million lives in death camps like Sobibor, Belzec, Treblinka, and Majdanek, where Muhsfeldt left his bloody mark. At Majdanek, Muhsfeldt was no ordinary SS officer. He was tasked with managing the crematoria and commanding the Sonderkommando, special prisoner units forced to assist in disposing of bodies after mass killings. Under his watch, thousands of corpses were processed daily, turning the ovens into an industrial death machine. What made his role in Operation Reinhard especially chilling was his initiative in refining the killing process. He didn't just follow orders. He suggested new methods to boost efficiency, like stacking bodies in the ovens to save fuel or prolonging burns to erase all traces. A Majdanek survivor recalled Muhsfeldt standing by the crematoria, watching with a cold smile as black smoke billowed from the chimneys. He even ordered the Sonderkommando to work faster, ignoring their exhaustion and terror. His involvement in Operation Reinhard wasn't just a job. It was a stage for him to showcase his cruelty and power, a secret uncovered only when post-war historical records came to light. While gas chambers and crematoria were already symbols of Holocaust brutality, Erich Muhsfeldt took horror to new heights with his own savage methods. Beyond using Zyklon B for mass executions, he frequently ordered prisoners, women and children included, to be burned alive without gassing them first. This wasn't just about saving time or resources. It was a way to indulge his twisted desires. A harrowing account from Majdanek survivors tells of a young Polish woman in her late 20s who dared to resist as she was herded toward the crematorium. In desperation, she clawed at Muhsfeldt's face, crying out, "Why must I die? What have I done?" Instead of sending her to the gas chamber as standard procedure dictated, Muhsfeldt snarled, "You'll burn alive." He commanded SS guards to bind her with wire, strap her to a cart typically used for corpses, and shove her into the crematorium flames while she was still conscious. Her screams echoed through the camp, a sound so haunting that even prisoners hardened by suffering trembled. But Muhsfeldt's barbarity didn't stop there. He had a habit of randomly selecting weak or defiant prisoners for live cremation as punishment. One witness described a roll call where Muhsfeldt pointed at a group of Jewish children, aged 8 to 10, and ordered, "Take them to the oven." When the SS hesitated, he grabbed 2 children, one in each hand, and threw them into the fire himself, all in front of hundreds of onlookers. These acts weren't just cruel. They were proof of a mind stripped of all humanity, where killing was both duty and delight. A true psychopath who thrived on others' pain. Survivors from Majdanek and Auschwitz described him as a monster, often drunk, his breath heavy with alcohol as he swung his wooden club at prisoners. Once, he beat a man unconscious for smiling at a firewood cart driver, kicking him until 3 teeth scattered across the snow, blood pooling red against white. Another time he drove a shovel handle into the throat of a prisoner who collapsed from exhaustion, watching him choke in agony until he went still. As crematorium chief, Muhsfeldt taunted prisoners with promises of fiery deaths. "I'll burn you alive," he'd sneer. And it was no empty threat. He followed through far too often. Children weren't spared his wrath. Survivor Jerzy Lang recalled Muhsfeldt carrying Jewish children, 2 in each hand, straight into the gas chamber. As the door shut, the crack of his pistol rang out, followed by a truck engine roaring to mask their cries. It was a symphony of death, conducted by Muhsfeldt himself. What made Erich Muhsfeldt so brutal? Historical records and witness accounts suggest his disturbed psyche wasn't solely a product of war or Nazi ideology. It may have existed long before he joined the SS. Some researchers believe he suffered from antisocial personality disorder, a condition that left him incapable of empathy or remorse. Those who knew him pre-war described him as a quiet man, prone to sudden, unexplained outbursts of rage. In the camps, this twisted mind shone through. Muhsfeldt didn't kill just because he was ordered to. He killed because he enjoyed it. One witness said that after ordering a group of prisoners burned alive, Muhsfeldt sat by the crematorium, opened a bottle of schnapps, and drank as the flames roared. He even joked with SS guards, saying, "The smell of burning makes me hungry." This pleasure in others' suffering wasn't mere ruthlessness. It was the mark of a mind utterly unhinged, where murder became a pastime. Another clue to his nature was how he treated the Sonderkommando, prisoners forced to work in the crematoria. He beat them for no reason beyond amusement, sometimes making them watch their own relatives burn as a form of mental torment. Muhsfeldt's warped psyche didn't just make him a mass killer. It turned him into a fiend even his SS peers feared. Despite his infamy in the Holocaust, Erich Muhsfeldt's family life remains a shadowy enigma, raising questions about his motives and mind. Before the war, he married Elisabeth, an ordinary German woman, and they had a son. His family life seemed unremarkable. He worked in a bakery, supported his household, and stayed out of major trouble. But when war broke out, everything changed. A little-known detail is that Elisabeth reportedly died in an Allied air raid around 1943 or 1944, as German cities faced relentless bombing. Their son, then a teenager, was sent to the Eastern Front to fight the Soviets, and later vanished, likely killed in battle. This loss prompts a big question. Did these personal tragedies fuel Muhsfeldt's brutality? Or were they just an excuse for the evil already within him? Some historians suggest his wife's death and son's disappearance may have hardened him, but there's no solid evidence he ever expressed grief or regret over his family. Instead, he seemed to see these losses as inevitable in war, diving deeper into his path of destruction rather than seeking solace. The mystery of Muhsfeldt's family life adds depth to his story and makes us wonder what seeds of cruelty might have been planted in his past. In May 1944, Erich Muhsfeldt returned to Auschwitz, this time overseeing the Birkenau crematoria, one of the camp's deadliest zones. This was the height of the Hungarian Jewish extermination, with hundreds of thousands arriving in packed cattle cars. Within hours, most were funneled into gas chambers or crematoria, their lives erased without a trace. Muhsfeldt and his teams worked tirelessly, beating women with rods, lashing men who resisted, and tossing the defiant into the flames alive. Jewish boys from the Warsaw Ghetto faced a similar fate. During a roll call separated from their parents, they scattered in panic across the camp, hoping to hide. But no one could escape Muhsfeldt. His SS guards rounded them up, herded them into the gas chambers, and his rage ensured none survived. A witness said he watched the scene with a sick smile, as if it were a game he relished. One of the most striking glimpses into Erich Muhsfeldt's mind comes from his odd relationship with Miklos Nisli, a Hungarian Jewish doctor forced to work for the SS at Auschwitz. Nisli, who later penned the famous memoir I Was Dr. Mengele's Assistant, had rare direct conversations with Muhsfeldt, moments that peeled back the layers of this killer's psyche. During one encounter, as Nisli examined SS officers, Muhsfeldt casually chatted about the war and politics. He spoke of Germany's weakening grip against the Allies. But what chilled most was his calm when discussing his deadly work. When Nisli asked if killing thousands ever weighed on him, Muhsfeldt gave a faint laugh and said, "To me, killing a man is no different from killing a chicken. If I'm tired, it's from drinking too much last night, not from this." That response didn't just reveal his eerie detachment. It was the clearest proof of how he'd severed all ties to humanity, seeing lives as worthless objects. These talks weren't one-offs. Nisli noted that Muhsfeldt sometimes sought him out to unwind after long days at the crematoria, treating him like an unwilling confidant. Yet this never softened Muhsfeldt. He kept ordering executions without hesitation, his words to Nisli only highlighting the distortion in his soul. Erich Muhsfeldt's lack of feeling wasn't just in his words. It showed in actions that would make any normal person falter. Once, after personally shooting 80 prisoners with a pistol during an execution at Auschwitz, he complained to Miklos Nisli about his health. He mentioned high blood pressure and dizziness, but when Nisli suggested the killings might be the cause, Muhsfeldt brushed it off. "No, I'm fine. It's probably just the liquor." This cold dismissal stunned Nisli. It was evidence that Muhsfeldt had crossed every human boundary, becoming a killing machine devoid of emotion. Another tale from Majdanek prisoners shows his detachment went further. After ordering a group of women and children burned alive, Muhsfeldt watched the flames while smoking, casually flicking ashes into the fire. When an SS guard asked if he felt anything, he shrugged and said, "It's just my job, nothing to dwell on." This numbness wasn't merely a wartime trait or Nazi brainwashing. It was the core of Muhsfeldt, a secret that made him one of the Holocaust's most terrifying figures. As the Allies closed in during the summer of 1944, Nazi Germany teetered on the edge. Erich Muhsfeldt was sent to the front lines in Hungary in August 1944, battling the advancing Soviet forces. Wounded in combat, he was reassigned to Flossenbürg concentration camp in April 1945, resuming his role over prisoners. There he shed none of his brutality. He executed those too weak for the camp's death marches, forced evacuations in harsh conditions as the Nazis fled the Allies. Under Muhsfeldt's command, whippings, starvation, and endless roll calls tormented Flossenbürg's inmates. Many chose to end their lives by running into electrified fences rather than endure his torment. His cruelty in the Reich's final days earned him the War Merit Cross Second Class, a warped honor from a dying regime. But that glory was fleeting. The Nazi collapse loomed, and with it, Muhsfeldt's day of reckoning. Erich Muhsfeldt's death wasn't the end of his story. A little-known secret lies in what happened to his body after the execution. Unlike the victims he incinerated, Muhsfeldt's corpse wasn't buried or cremated. It was handed over to the University of Krakow, where it became a medical specimen for students studying anatomy. This was a final disgrace for a man once proud of his power. His body now a tool for science, dissected and exposed before those he'd once despised. This wasn't just symbolic punishment. It carried deeper meaning. Professors at the university aimed to make his death a lesson, a reminder of cruelty's consequences and justice's necessity. For years, medical students examined Muhsfeldt's bones and tissues, exploring the frame of a man who embodied evil. It was a fitting end, yet a secret few beyond academia knew. Erich Muhsfeldt's family life, as noted earlier, met a tragic fate too. Miklos Niesli recorded that his wife, Elizabeth, died in an Allied air raid, and his only son vanished on the Eastern Front, likely killed fighting the Soviets. When word of Muhsfeldt's execution spread, no one mourned him. The world saw him for what he was, a monster whose death closed a horrific chapter but couldn't erase its scars. His family's story didn't end with loss. Some records suggest distant relatives in Germany tried to sever ties with his name after the war, changing surnames or leaving their hometowns to avoid association. Muhsfeldt's legacy wasn't a soldier's pride. It was an indelible stain, a warning to future generations of the cost of fanaticism and brutality. Erich Muhsfeldt's execution wasn't just the end of a war criminal. It was proof of justice's enduring strength against evil. His story, with its chilling secrets, from Operation Reinhard's